The year was 2147, and Earth had become a ghost town. 60 years earlier, humanity had vanished without a trace. No bodies were left behind, no signs of struggle, just empty cities frozen in time. The silence was deafening. Streets that once buzzed with life now lay still, covered in layers of dust. Buildings stood untouched, as if waiting for their owners to return. It was a mystery that baffled scientists, historians, and explorers from across the galaxy. Among those trying to solve the puzzle was Alex Carter, an American scientist aboard the interstellar vessel *EOS*. He wasn't alone on this mission. Rachel Moore, a linguist known for her sharp mind and calm demeanor, worked alongside him. Together, they were part of a team sent to investigate what had happened to humanity. Their destination: New York City, one of the most iconic places on Earth, now eerily quiet and deserted. As Alex stepped out of the ship, he felt a chill run down his spine. The air was cold, and the sky above was gray, casting long shadows over the city. Rachel followed close behind, clutching a small device designed to scan for any unusual energy patterns. They walked toward Times Square, once a bustling hub of activity, now a graveyard of neon lights and billboards. Everything seemed frozen, like a photograph taken decades ago. "This place gives me the creeps," Rachel said, breaking the silence. Her voice echoed faintly, bouncing off the empty buildings around them. Alex nodded but didn't reply. His eyes scanned the surroundings carefully. Something about the scene felt wrong. It wasn't just the emptiness or the unnatural quiet. There was a sense of being watched, though he couldn't explain why. He glanced at Rachel, who seemed equally uneasy. She pointed to a nearby building where strange symbols were carved into the wall. They looked like scratches at first glance, but upon closer inspection, they formed intricate patterns. "What do you think these are?" Rachel asked, running her fingers over the markings. "I don't know," Alex admitted, "but they're not random. Someone, or something, put them here." The symbols weren't the only thing that caught their attention. As they explored further, they noticed other oddities. Streetlights flickered even though there was no power source. Footsteps echoed in the distance, though no one was there. Even their equipment acted strangely, giving inconsistent readings. At one point, Alex's scanner picked up a spike in energy levels, only for it to drop suddenly moments later. Rachel stopped walking and turned to face Alex. "Do you feel it too? Like we're not alone?" Alex hesitated before answering. "Yeah, I do. But whatever's here, it's not human." Despite the growing unease, they pressed on. Their goal was simple: find answers. Humanity's disappearance was the biggest unsolved mystery of their time, and they were determined to crack it. Little did they know, the truth was far stranger than anything they could have imagined. By the time they reached the heart of Times Square, night had fallen. The darkness made the city feel even more alien. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, and every sound seemed amplified. Rachel shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "We should head back soon," she said nervously. "This place isn't safe." Alex agreed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Just as they prepared to leave, a sudden gust of wind swept through the square, carrying with it a faint whisper. Both froze, straining to hear. The voice was soft, almost melodic, repeating words neither of them could understand. "Did you hear that?" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. Alex nodded slowly. Whatever they had stumbled upon, it was only the beginning. Back at their base camp, a towering skyscraper converted into a research hub. Alex and Rachel pored over the strange symbols they had found etched into the walls of Times Square. The markings were unlike anything either of them had seen before, too deliberate to be random graffiti, yet too complex to decipher at first glance. They spread out photographs and sketches across a large table, trying to piece together some kind of meaning. Daniel Hayes, a cryptographer with a knack for solving puzzles, joined them. He was part of their team and had been analyzing other data collected during their exploration of New York City. With his help, they began to notice patterns in the symbols. Some resembled binary code, while others seemed to form geometric shapes. Daniel suggested it might be a form of advanced communication or encryption. "It's not just decoration," Daniel said, pointing to one of the images. "These are instructions, or maybe warnings." Rachel leaned closer, her brow furrowed. "Warnings about what?" "That's the thing," Alex chimed in. "Whatever happened here wasn't natural. These symbols could hold the key to understanding why humanity disappeared." The trio worked late into the night, feeding fragments of the symbols into their computers. Slowly, bits of information started to emerge. The decoded text hinted at something called the event. It described experiments involving quantum mechanics and alternate dimensions. According to the fragmented messages, scientists had tried to open portals to other worlds, but lost control when one portal collapsed inward, creating what they referred to as the void. "The void," Rachel repeated, her voice tinged with unease. "What does that even mean?" Alex shook his head. "I don't know yet, but if this is true, then humanity didn't just vanish. They were pulled somewhere else." As the hours passed, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Strange things began happening around the base camp. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. Lights flickered sporadically, and faint whispers echoed through the empty halls. At first, the team dismissed these occurrences as stress or environmental interference, but Alex couldn't ignore the growing sense that something, or someone, was watching them. One evening, as Rachel sifted through old documents recovered from abandoned offices, she came across a handwritten note tucked inside a dusty file folder. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. It read, "Asterisk, they don't understand. The void is alive. It's pulling us in. Asterisk." She showed the note to Alex, who frowned deeply. "This isn't good. Whoever wrote this knew something terrible was coming." Daniel chimed in, his tone serious. "If the void really exists, we need to figure out how it works, and fast. This isn't just history, it's a warning." Despite the mounting evidence, not everyone on the team shared their urgency. Some believed the symbols were nothing more than remnants of failed scientific projects, irrelevant to humanity's disappearance. Others argued that focusing too much on abstract theories would distract them from finding concrete answers. But Alex wasn't convinced. He felt a gnawing certainty that the void was central to the mystery. That night, unable to sleep, he wandered to the observation deck of the skyscraper. From there, he could see the sprawling city below, bathed in moonlight. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful, but Alex knew better. Beneath its quiet surface lay secrets waiting to be uncovered. As he stood there, lost in thought, Rachel approached quietly. She held a tablet displaying new findings from the decoded symbols. "There's more," she said softly. "It mentions a facility beneath Central Park. Apparently, that's where the experiments took place." Alex turned to her, his expression grim. "Then that's where we need to go next." Rachel hesitated, glancing out at the darkened city. "Do you think it's safe? What if whatever happened back then is still happening now?" Alex didn't answer right away. He knew the risks, but he also knew they couldn't turn back. Humanity's disappearance was no longer just a mystery. It was a challenge. And Alex was determined to face it head-on, no matter the cost. The next morning, Alex and Rachel prepared for their journey to Central Park. The thought of exploring an underground facility filled with unknown dangers weighed heavily on both of them. But they had no choice. If the facility held answers about humanity's disappearance, they couldn't afford to ignore it. Daniel stayed behind at the base camp to analyze more data while the two set out together. Central Park looked surreal in its current state. Once a vibrant green oasis in the heart of New York City, it was now overgrown with weeds and tangled vines. Trees stretched tall and wild, their branches twisting unnaturally toward the sky. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the park itself resisted their presence. Every step they took seemed to echo louder than it should, breaking the eerie silence that surrounded them. Using a map recovered from old records, they located the entrance to the underground lab, a hidden door disguised beneath a crumbling stone structure. It took some effort, but Alex managed to pry it open, revealing a dark staircase descending into the earth. Rachel switched on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. "Let's hope this doesn't lead us straight into trouble," she muttered under her breath. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and the walls became lined with rusted metal panels. Faint remnants of electricity hummed faintly in the distance, suggesting that parts of the facility were still operational after all these years. They passed by rooms filled with dusty equipment, broken monitors, and scattered papers. It was clear the place had been abandoned in a hurry. In one of the larger chambers, Rachel spotted something unusual. A journal lying on a desk, its cover worn and faded. Curious, she picked it up and began flipping through its pages. The entries belonged to someone named Emily Dawson, a scientist who had worked in the facility. Her writing started off calm and professional, detailing experiments involving quantum physics and dimensional shifts. But as the entries progressed, her tone grew increasingly frantic. "She talks about dreams," Rachel said aloud, reading sections to Alex. "She says she dreamed of being pulled into another world, somewhere cold and empty. She calls it the void." Alex frowned. "That matches what we found in those symbols. Do you think she saw it coming?" Rachel nodded slowly. "Maybe. Listen to this." She read aloud from the final entry. Asterisk, "It's happening faster now. I can feel it pulling me. We made a mistake. We opened doors we shouldn't have. If anyone finds this, don't trust the machine. It's not just a tool. It's alive." Asterisk. A chill ran down Alex's spine. He glanced around the dimly lit room, half expecting something to leap out at them. Alive? What does that even mean? Before Rachel could answer, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the lights flickered violently. For a moment, everything went pitch black. When the flashlights came back on, they noticed new symbols glowing faintly on the walls, similar to the ones they'd seen in Times Square, but sharper, more defined. "This place is reacting to us," Alex whispered, his voice tense. "We're not alone here." Rachel gripped her flashlight tightly. "Do you think Emily's warning has something to do with this?" "It's possible," Alex replied. "But we need to keep moving. If there's a machine down here, we have to find it." They pressed onward, following the glowing symbols deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels. Along the way, they encountered strange phenomena. Shadows that moved independently of their light sources, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and fleeting glimpses of figures vanishing around corners. Each occurrence left them more unsettled than the last. Finally, they reached a massive steel door marked with a single word, void. Alex hesitated before pushing it open, unsure of what awaited them inside. As the door creaked wide, a rush of cold air hit them, carrying with it the faint sound of voices speaking in unison. Beyond the threshold lay a cavernous chamber dominated by a colossal machine pulsating with energy. Rachel stared at it, her eyes wide. This must be it, the source of everything. Alex stepped forward cautiously, his mind racing. Whatever secrets the machine held, they were about to uncover them. And maybe, just maybe, solve the greatest mystery of all time. The machine stood in the center of the chamber, towering over them like a monolith from another world. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if made of liquid metal, and strange lights pulsed rhythmically across its body. The air around it crackled with energy, making the hairs on Alex's arms stand on end. Rachel stepped closer, her flashlight trembling slightly in her hand. "What is this thing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low hum emanating from the machine. Alex didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the swirling patterns within the machine's translucent walls. Inside, he could see shapes, cities, landscapes, even people, all flickering in and out of focus as though they existed in multiple places at once. "It's not just a machine," he said finally. "It's a gateway." Rachel turned to him, her expression uneasy. "A gateway to where?" "To the void," Alex replied. "This is what Emily was talking about. It connects our world to something else." As they examined the machine more closely, they noticed panels covered in symbols similar to the ones they had seen earlier. These weren't random designs. They were instructions, controls meant to operate the device. Daniel's decoding work back at the base camp had given them enough knowledge to understand parts of it, but activating or reprogramming the machine would be far riskier than anything they'd done before. Before they could decide their next move, the room shifted. The temperature dropped sharply, and the glowing symbols on the walls began to brighten. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, twisting and writhing as if alive. Then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared near the machine. A woman dressed in tattered lab clothes, her form translucent and flickering like static. "Who are you?" Alex demanded, taking a step back instinctively. "I'm Emily Dawson," the figure said softly, her voice echoing, as though coming from a great distance. She looked at them with sad, hollow eyes. "You found me, and the truth." Rachel gasped, recognizing the name from the journal. "You're the scientist who wrote those entries." Emily nodded slowly. "I stayed behind when everyone else disappeared. I thought I could fix it, stop the void from consuming us all. But I failed." Her gaze drifted toward the machine. "That thing, it pulls everything into alternate dimensions. When it collapsed inward during the experiment, it created a rift. Humanity didn't vanish. They were scattered across countless realities." Alex frowned. "Scattered? You mean they're still alive?" "In a way," Emily replied. "Their consciousness exists in fragments, trapped between worlds. Some live full lives in other dimensions, while others linger here, unable to move on." Rachel took a cautious step forward. "Is there any way to bring them back?" Emily hesitated, her form flickering again. "There's a chance. If someone reprograms the machine, they might stabilize the rift and reunite humanity. But it's dangerous. The void doesn't want to let go." Alex exchanged a glance with Rachel. He knew what she was thinking. The risks were enormous. Reprogramming the machine could collapse the entire system, or worse, trap them in the void themselves. Yet doing nothing meant leaving humanity lost forever. "We'll do it," Alex said firmly. "Tell us how." Emily studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You'll need to enter the core of the machine. Once inside, you'll interface directly with its systems. Be careful. The void will try to confuse you, show you things that aren't real. Trust only your instincts." Without wasting time, Alex prepared himself. He strapped on a neural interface device designed by Daniel, which would allow him to interact with the machine's complex programming. Rachel handed him a small handheld tool to stabilize his connection once inside. "Be careful," she said, her voice tight with worry. "We don't know what's waiting for you in there." "I'll be fine," Alex assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. Taking a deep breath, he approached the machine and placed his hands against its surface. A surge of energy coursed through him as the machine opened, pulling him into its glowing interior. For a moment, everything went white. When Alex opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a vast, surreal landscape. Cities floated in the sky, rivers flowed upward, and faces blurred together like reflections in water. The void was both beautiful and terrifying, a place where reality itself bent and broke. "This isn't going to be easy," Alex muttered to himself as he began navigating the strange world around him. Little did he know, the hardest part was yet to come. Inside the void, Alex felt as though he had stepped into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The world around him was chaotic and ever-changing, defying every rule of physics he had ever known. Buildings twisted and folded in on themselves, gravity shifted unpredictably, and colors blended together in ways that made his head spin. Despite the disorienting environment, he forced himself to focus. He had a mission to complete. As he moved forward, guided by the faint hum of the machine's energy, he began encountering visions of alternate versions of himself. Some were thriving, living luxurious lives in futuristic cities or peaceful existences in quiet towns. Others were struggling, trapped in desolate wastelands or endless wars. Each version tried to speak to him, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of warnings and pleas. "You don't belong here," one version said, stepping close enough for Alex to see his face clearly. This version looked older, weary from years of hardship. "Turn back while you still can." Another version appeared beside him, younger and full of optimism. "Stay with us," it urged. "You'll find peace here. No pain, no loss, just endless possibilities." Alex shook his head, trying to block out their voices. He knew they weren't real, not entirely. They were fragments of the void, designed to confuse and distract him. Emily's warning echoed in his mind. "Trust only your instincts." With renewed determination, he pushed onward, ignoring the illusions swirling around him. The deeper he ventured, the more intense the visions became. At one point, he found himself standing in what looked like his childhood home. His parents sat at the kitchen table, smiling warmly as if nothing had changed. For a brief moment, Alex felt an overwhelming urge to stay, to abandon everything and return to a life he thought he'd lost forever. "Alex." A voice broke through the illusion, sharp and clear. It was Rachel's voice, calling to him from somewhere far away. "Don't listen to them. You're almost there." Her words snapped him back to reality, or at least as close to reality as he could get inside the void. The vision of his childhood home dissolved, leaving him alone once again in the shifting landscape. He realized then that the void wasn't just showing him alternate realities. It was testing him, probing his fears and desires to keep him trapped. Finally, after what felt like hours, Alex reached the core of the machine. It was a glowing orb suspended in the middle of an empty space, pulsating with raw energy. As he approached, he felt a surge of resistance, as though the void itself was fighting against him. But he didn't stop. Using the neural interface device, he connected to the orb and began reprogramming its systems. Lines of code scrolled across his vision, each adjustment bringing him closer to stabilizing the rift. However, the process wasn't smooth. Every change triggered violent reactions. The ground quaked, shadows lunged at him, and whispers screamed in his ears. Through it all, Alex held steady, focusing on the task at hand. Back in the chamber, Rachel watched anxiously as the machine reacted to Alex's efforts. Lights flashed erratically, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter than ever. She kept her eyes glued to the monitor displaying Alex's vitals, praying he would make it through. "He's doing it," Daniel exclaimed from behind her, his voice filled with awe. "The rift is starting to stabilize." Just as hope began to rise, the machine let out a deafening roar. A wave of energy rippled outward, shaking the entire facility. Rachel braced herself against the wall, shielding her face from flying debris. When the chaos subsided, she turned back to the machine and gasped. Faint outlines of human figures began materializing around them. People blinked awake, confused but alive, as if emerging from a long sleep. Among them was Emily Dawson, now fully solid and no longer a projection. She looked at Rachel with tears in her eyes. "It worked," Emily whispered. "Humanity is coming back." But Alex wasn't among them. Rachel's heart sank as she scanned the room, searching desperately for any sign of Alex. The machine had stabilized, and people were beginning to reappear, blinking in confusion as they awakened from their decades-long absence. But Alex was nowhere to be seen. Panic bubbled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. "Where is he?" Rachel demanded, turning to Emily, who stood nearby looking both relieved and troubled. Emily hesitated before answering. "The void. It doesn't release everyone. Some remain trapped because their essence is too fragmented, or because they sacrificed themselves to save the rest. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Sacrificed? You mean Alex stayed behind? Emily nodded slowly. He must have anchored himself to the core to stabilize the rift. Without him holding it together long enough, the process wouldn't have worked. No, Rachel shouted, shaking her head. We can't leave him there. She rushed toward the machine, determined to pull Alex out somehow, but Daniel grabbed her arm firmly. Rachel, stop. If you go in now, you'll just get lost too. Alex knew the risks. He chose this. Rachel struggled against Daniel's grip, tears streaming down her face. He shouldn't have had to choose. We promised we'd do this together. Her voice broke, and for a moment, she allowed herself to collapse into Daniel's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The weight of everything, the loss, the danger, the sheer impossibility of what they'd just accomplished, hit her all at once. Humanity was saved, but at what cost? Meanwhile, strange phenomena continued to plague the chamber. Shadows flickered around the edges of the room, and faint whispers echoed as though the void wasn't entirely closed off yet. Rachel wiped her eyes and straightened up, determination replacing despair. She couldn't give up. Not yet. There has to be a way, she said firmly, her voice steadier now. If the machine brought others back, maybe it can bring him back too. Emily stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. It's possible, but dangerous. The rift is fragile. Forcing it open again could undo everything we've done. I don't care, Rachel shot back. I'm not leaving without him. With no time to waste, Rachel began working alongside Emily and Daniel to recalibrate the machine. They pored over its controls, adjusting settings to create a temporary bridge back into the void. As they worked, more survivors gathered around, watching silently. Some offered help, while others simply stared in awe at the device that had held humanity captive for so long. Finally, after tense minutes of effort, the machine hummed to life once more. A portal opened, a swirling vortex of light and color, and Rachel prepared to step through. Daniel tried to stop her again, but she shook her head firmly. I'm going. If anyone can find him, it's me. Before anyone could argue further, she took a deep breath and stepped into the vortex. On the other side, Rachel found herself in the same surreal landscape Alex had described. Everything shifted and warped around her, disorienting and overwhelming. She called out his name, her voice echoing endlessly. At first, there was no response, only silence and the eerie feeling of being watched. But then she saw him. Alex stood in the distance, staring at something she couldn't see. His body glowed faintly, as though part of the void itself. When he turned and saw her, his eyes widened in shock. Rachel? What are you doing here? He asked, his voice strained. I came to bring you back, she replied, stepping closer. You didn't think I'd let you stay here alone, did you? Alex shook his head. You shouldn't have come. This place, it's not safe. I don't care, Rachel said, grabbing his hand. We're getting out of here, together. As they made their way back toward the portal, the void fought fiercely to keep them apart. Shadows lunged, voices screamed, and gravity twisted unpredictably. But Rachel held tight to Alex, refusing to let go. Together, they reached the edge of the vortex just as it began to close. With one final leap, they tumbled back into the chamber, landing hard on the cold floor. The machine powered down immediately, its glow fading into darkness. Around them, cheers erupted from the survivors, but Rachel barely heard them. She was focused only on Alex, pulling him into a tight embrace. You idiot, she whispered, laughing and crying at the same time. Don't ever scare me like that again. Alex smiled weakly, his voice hoarse. I'll try not to. For the first time in years, hope filled the air. Humanity was whole again. And so were Alex and Rachel. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Survivors who had returned from the void began piecing together their lives, trying to make sense of what had happened. For many, The memories of their time in alternate dimensions were hazy, like fragments of a dream slipping through their fingers. Some remembered vivid details, cities floating in endless skies or worlds where time moved backward. But others recalled nothing at all. What they did share was a collective sense of relief and gratitude for being reunited. Alex and Rachel worked tirelessly alongside Emily and Daniel to help the survivors adjust. They set up temporary shelters in Central Park, using materials scavenged from nearby buildings. Food supplies were limited, but enough remained preserved in old warehouses to sustain everyone until agriculture could be restored. The team also organized meetings to explain what had happened, though simplifying the concept of the void proved challenging. It's like another layer of reality. Alex explained during one such gathering. When the machine collapsed, it pulled humanity into that space. You weren't gone. You were just somewhere else. Not everyone understood, but most accepted his explanation without question. After all, they had lived through the impossible. It wasn't hard to believe that science had played a role in their disappearance and return. Despite the progress, not everything went smoothly. Not every human soul came back. Some chose to remain in the alternate dimensions they had grown attached to, finding peace or purpose there. Others simply couldn't be retrieved, their essence too fragmented by decades in the void. It was a painful truth, one that weighed heavily on Alex and Rachel. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the park, Alex and Rachel sat together on a makeshift bench. The air was cool, and the sounds of laughter and conversation drifted around them. Humanity was slowly rebuilding, but the scars of their ordeal remained fresh. I keep thinking about the ones we couldn't bring back, Rachel said softly, breaking the silence. Her gaze was fixed on the ground, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Me too, Alex replied, his voice heavy with emotion. But we did what we could. That has to count for something. Rachel nodded, though her expression remained troubled. Do you think the void is really closed, or will it try to pull us back someday? Alex hesitated before answering. He glanced toward the facility beneath the park, its entrance now sealed shut. I don't know, but if it does, we'll face it together. His words brought a small smile to Rachel's face. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a rare moment of calm after so much chaos. Despite everything they had endured, she felt hopeful, not just for humanity, but for their future. Emily joined them a short while later, carrying a thermos of hot tea. Thought you two might need this, she said, handing each of them a cup. Her presence was comforting. She had become an unexpected ally during their journey. Thank you, Rachel said, taking the sip. How are you holding up? Emily shrugged. Better than I expected. I spent years trapped between worlds, watching everyone disappear. Now that I'm free, it feels like waking up from a nightmare. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of life returning to Earth. Children laughed as they played among the trees, and groups of adults worked together to clear debris and rebuild structures. It was far from perfect, but it was a start. As night fell, Alex stood and stretched. We should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. Rachel nodded, rising to her feet. Before they parted ways, she turned to Alex. Promise me something, she said, her tone serious. Anything. If anything strange happens, if the void tries to come back, you tell me right away. No secrets, okay? Alex smiled faintly. No secrets. I promise. With that, they headed to their separate quarters, exhausted but hopeful. Humanity had been given a second chance, and despite the challenges ahead, they were determined to make the most of it. The void still existed, a silent reminder of how close they had come to permanent extinction. But for now, it was quiet. And in that quiet, there was hope. Months passed, and Earth began to heal. The once silent cities came alive again with the sounds of construction, laughter, and music. Survivors worked together to rebuild society, drawing lessons from their time in the void. Humanity had been given a second chance, and they were determined not to waste it. Alex and Rachel became symbols of hope, celebrated for their role in solving the greatest mystery of all time. But life didn't return to normal, not entirely. The void left its mark on everyone who had experienced it. Some survivors reported vivid dreams of alternate realities, while others claimed to hear whispers in empty rooms. Scientists like Alex and Emily dedicated themselves to studying these phenomena, hoping to understand the true nature of the void and prevent another catastrophe. One evening, Alex stood on the rooftop of a newly repaired skyscraper, looking out over New York City. Lights twinkled in the distance, and the hum of activity filled the air. It was a far cry from the ghost town he had first explored months ago. Rachel joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look deep in thought," she said, handing him one of the cups. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Alex replied, taking a sip. "It's hard to believe this place was empty not too long ago." Rachel nodded, her eyes scanning the skyline. "Do you ever wonder what happened to the people who stayed behind? The ones who didn't come back?" "All the time," Alex admitted. "I think about them every day. But I also think about how lucky we are to be here, to have made it through." Rachel smiled faintly. "We're lucky, sure, but we're also stronger because of it. Everything we went through, it changed us." Alex agreed. The experience had forged bonds between them that couldn't be broken. Together, they had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Yet neither of them forgot the sacrifices made along the way, or the lingering questions about the void. Down in Central Park, work crews dismantled the last remnants of the underground facility. The machine itself had been sealed away in a secure location, inaccessible to anyone except a small team of researchers led by Emily. She believed studying the device could unlock new insights into quantum mechanics and alternate dimensions, but only if handled responsibly. "We can't let curiosity blind us again," Emily often reminded her team. "What happened before wasn't just an accident. It was arrogance. We have to respect the boundaries of science." Her words resonated deeply with Alex and Rachel. They knew better than anyone the dangers of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. As they watched humanity rebuild, they vowed never to repeat the mistakes of the past. In the years that followed, Earth flourished. Cities grew greener, powered by renewable energy sources discovered during the reconstruction efforts. Governments formed alliances based on cooperation rather than competition, united by the shared trauma of their disappearance. Education systems emphasized ethics and responsibility, ensuring future generations approached scientific discovery with caution and humility. For Alex and Rachel, life settled into a quiet rhythm. They continued working together, traveling the world to document stories of survival and resilience. Their adventures took them to places both familiar and foreign, each journey reminding them of how precious life truly was. One night, as they sat beneath a starry sky, Rachel turned to Alex. "Do you think we'll ever see the void again?" Alex hesitated before answering. He glanced up at the stars, their light stretching across infinite space. "Maybe. But if we do, we'll face it together, just like last time." Rachel smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Together. And so, humanity moved forward, forever changed by the echoes of its past, but hopeful for the future. The void remained, a silent testament to the fragility of existence, but no longer a threat. For the first time in decades, Earth felt whole again. And in that wholeness, there was peace.